Welcome to the Sleep is a Skill podcast. My name is Molly McLaughlin, and I own a company that optimizes sleep through technology, accountability, and behavioral change. Each week, I'll be interviewing world-class experts ranging from doctors, innovators, and thought leaders to give actionable tips and strategies that you can implement to become a more skillful sleeper. Let's jump into your dose of practical sleep training. Welcome to the Sleep is a Skill podcast. My guest today is Brian Richards, and he's a nationally known expert in sauna therapy, light therapy, and EMFs. And in 2013, he founded Sauna Space, a company that combines cutting-edge infrared technology with the age-old practice of sauna. In 2008, Brian had faced an important health decision: start taking pharmaceuticals for acne, insomnia, and adrenal fatigue, or try full-spectrum sauna therapy coupled with ancestral practices like clean diet, proper sleep, and yoga. By opting for the natural approach, Brian rapidly transformed his health. This life-changing experience inspired him to create Sauna Space. In his journey to develop the perfect product, Brian has immersed himself in the science and research behind light, heat, electromagnetism, and the human body. 13 years later, he brings a refreshing approach to natural living, biohacking, and natural health transformation. All right, you all, I'm so excited to announce our new sponsor, Soul CBD. When I was at my lowest point dealing with my insomnia, CBD was one of the key compounds that I leaned into to combat my crippling anxiety, calm my nervous system, and support my journey to entrain my circadian rhythm. But of all the brands out there, where can you go that you can have a strong trust in their quality? Well, Soul CBD is completely THC-free, organically farmed, gluten-free, and third-party tested for toxins. Now, one of the things that is great about Soul is that they aim to help create rituals around your CBD use. And sleep and rituals are best friends. For instance, I love that Soul CBD supports a nighttime bath routine with their CBD bath bombs, which help to combat stress, soothe aching muscles with a mix of CBD essential oils and dead sea salts. Another ritual that we aim to cultivate in the realm of sleep optimization is circadian rhythm intermittent fasting, which is really all about eating your meals between sunrise and sunset. And Soul CBD has very popular gummies that can serve as a nighttime dessert or treat to look forward to without caving to ice cream. Nice alternative. My go-tos personally are their oils, capsules, topicals, and even CBD bath bombs. It's helpful for anyone who struggles with anxiety, pain, or sleep. Now, particularly when I'm traveling, I like to lean into as many things as possible to help with inflammation, and CBD does just that. Now, here's a really cool part. You get 15% off automatically and free shipping when you go to mysoul.com/sleep is a skill. I'm going to say that again. You get 15% off automatically. All you have to do is go to this link, which will be in the show notes, mysoulcbd.com/sleep is a skill. All right, let's get on to the show. And welcome to the Sleep is a Skill podcast. I am really excited for my conversation today with Brian Richards. So Brian, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Absolutely, Molly. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Oh, absolutely. We've had a couple interactions. I believe the first one being back during the lockdown or somewhere around that time or pandemic. And I've had the opportunity to test out some of your products. I was just sharing that one on my desk right now. You've got yours. And then also I've gotten to see you. Yes, exactly. For the video cuts, we've got them both here. Also got to connect with you at various conferences, sort of in the biohacking space and what have you. So really excited to go deeper with you today. And so I think it makes a lot of sense to kind of start at the beginning of the why. What is the reason for you getting into this space, kind of understanding your passion, and of course, how it connects to sleep?
Yeah, absolutely. What can I say? It's a personal journey of healing. I was selfish. I wanted to look and feel better, just like everybody else. It's not that I didn't care about anybody else, but I was preoccupied with my own health concerns.
Yeah.
And basically, my deal is young, healthy guy, always was, athletic and good at science and math and stuff. but I started to get really worn out. Kind of what I realized later was a very typical array of symptoms related to adrenal fatigue, which has toxicity issues and in the environment and just being worn out and oxidative stress and all these things. So my symptoms were insomnia and mind racing and lethargy and kind of this odd body acne that I had only on my torso. So, if you met me on the street, you'd be like, bro, what's your problem? And when you talk about these symptoms are a little bit nebulous, like what's the diagnosis and what's the treatment? And I felt like I'm young. I'm still at this point, I was still in my 20s and what's the problem? And my shock moment, my aha moment was when I went to a dermatologist and they recommended that I take Accutane, which has now been taken off the market. It's associated with liver cancer, and it's one of those pharmaceutical solutions that has a lot of side effects and a lot of issues with it. And so I thought to myself, no, I don't want to do that. I want something that's going to correct the root causes of my problems and not be a Band-Aid or a mask or potentially even cause other problems. So I did what I think a lot of people are being forced to do nowadays, which is to get online and find your own answer. So I did a lot of research into this, kept researching, and what continued to come up as an elegant, sort of holistic, graceful solution to all things in many ways was sauna. Very interesting, sauna. And that the biggest contributing factor is pollution. And the human body is really amazing and really resilient and really optimal if it gets what it's biologically programmed to get, which our ancestors got. But there's a combination of so many factors of our environment that's so much less optimal today than it was maybe 100 years ago. So this idea of detoxification and sauna. And then at the end of that, I discovered Dr. John Harvey Kellogg's invention. Dr. Kellogg, the Kellogg's cornflakes guy. He had a sanitarium in Battle Creek, Michigan in the 20s. So really fascinating stuff. This guy, so incandescent light bulbs were invented in 1887, the first electrically powered light source. 3 years later, in 1891, Dr. Kellogg came by and said, holy moly, let's use these light bulbs as a sauna. There's something special to this light. So he proceeded to invent what he called the electric incandescent light bath. And he used it at his sanitarium at Battle Creek, Michigan, with like 50,000 patients over a period of years in the first decade of the 20th century. And then in 1910, he wrote about all this in a book called Light Therapeutics. It's like, whoa, light therapy, in 1905? Like, why don't we know more about that? And you can see this online. It's called Light Therapeutics. This is his book. And in it, he has these gigantic Victorian style cabinets that have just a huge array of incandescent light bulbs. And that was the sauna. You went and you stood in it or you sat in it and you sweated it out. And he reported, according to his protocol, just a tremendous success with what they called back in the day invalids, which is now not such an acceptable term for people with chronic disease. But essentially, he was dealing with everything that he came up against. He was seeing improvement. So I saw that, and then I sort of, in my mind, I'm looking at that. I'm looking at every human culture on earth that has some kind of sauna tradition, some kind of sweat lodge or sauna bath or hot pool, hot passive sweating therapy of some kind. And then you have this guy that comes in and says, well, hey, we can do that, but we can also do it with this special light that we don't understand much about, which we subsequently in the last 100 years have studied heavily. It's called red light therapy or near infrared light therapy, or more scientifically, it's called photobiomodulation. So light controlling biology. And so with the two of those together and the fact that I'm kind of a tinkerer kind of guy, I'm a do-it-yourselfer kind of guy, I went ahead and built my own. So I built my own electric incandescent light bath. And so my aha moment was, in terms of the solution, was that I used this once, Molly, before bed. And the next day I slept really well. And then I used it again before bed and I slept really well again. So then I proceeded to use it basically with discipline over a period of 6 months, like every day, but always right before bed. And at the end of that, it was only then I realized, wow, what I had was, I think, adrenal fatigue, self-diagnosed, by the way. I'm not a healthcare provider. Yeah. But wow, all my sleep problems went away immediately. But then over time, my energy levels, my outlook, the acne. Another symptom I didn't mention was irascibility. Like I was really irritable, and quick to, a short fuse. And all of a sudden I'm like I have so much patience, even for my mother, in these long extended conversations. And that was a shocker for me. So essentially that got me into what is now Sauna Space. I was fixing up houses and remodeling them and trying to rent them out. And I didn't realize that there was a human component there that I just did not have the emotional constitution for. I'm just kind of a nice guy and I like people to be happy.
Yes.
And then this came up. And so I made a few for some friends and some family. And then I got kind of this small endorsement from a doctor. And then I formed the company. And that was in the latter part of 2013. And I got a business loan. And that was, 7 or 8 years ago now. And now I am kind of what you see behind me. We have 40 or 50 employees, and we make a lot of Sauna Space saunas and other things like this photon therapy light that you have that
yes,
is a little bit of a newer product. But even in the beginning and with all the product development stuff, I had no idea about the science, but it was intriguing and I wanted to know. And so I continued to research it and sort of dive deep into it. And here we are today. We have this amazing understanding now, wherein, like I mentioned before, we have this ancestral wisdom, and it agrees perfectly with our modern observation using microscopes and all this scientific stuff to understand this red light therapy, what it does in our cells, what it does to our mitochondria, how it affects our overall health, and how that ancient wisdom is buttressed by this, empirical observation we have today. Sauna is one of the most widely studied disciplines, therapeutic modalities out there. There's probably 3,000 studies in the PubMed and thousands on humans, not just little petri dish studies. Furthermore, what's even more robust than that is the study into photobiomodulation, near-infrared light therapy. For the definition of photobiomodulation is the use of red and near-infrared light, particularly to heal and repair dying tissue or degenerate tissue, and then also optimize tissue that is healthy. And so there's like 6,000 studies in the PubMed using these near-infrared wavelengths of light to basically heal everything under the sun, whether it's pain reduction or wound healing or literally the treatment of so many diseases now. That's why you see it more and more out there. You see it, and people even know about red light therapy. So the magic of what we do, though, is we've wedded those two together. We're saying, look, let's do sauna because we know there's so much research and so much ancestral wisdom saying we need to do this. And the same thing with the photobiomodulation. So with Sauna Space, we stack those two together and you do them at the same time. And certainly they have a synergy between the two, but we could talk for hours and hours about each one on its own. But really what's most interesting is, okay, there's the science, there's the blah, blah, blah. Before your eyes start bleeding, it's like, what is the practical implication of all this? Can we actually use any of this to benefit our lives and make our wellness better and be happier and more healthy and live and feel better? And the truth is we can do this at home on our own without a healthcare provider, without a prescription. And it's just more than anything else, perhaps the ultimate foundation of one's wellness. And that's especially because we don't get 7 or 8 hours of sunshine on our naked bodies like our ancestors did.
Absolutely.
And I'm sure you talk about that, the relationship between sleep and adequate sunlight. And now we're learning more and more about it, and it's all about, it's so many things, but melatonin is one of those things. But also like sleep, I can drop a few fact bombs if you want. So
sure, please.
So it was understood for a long time that decreasing the core body temperature significantly helps induce a more higher quality sleep. So like a cold bath, a cold therapy before sleep. But what's more recently understood is that you can do the same thing by heating the body up, because you heat the body up in a sauna 3 degrees and then it cools back down 3 degrees. And so sauna is being demonstrated as being just as effective for promoting sleep. And that's like a direct effect. But then indirectly, if you think about it, the more healthy and optimal the body is in so many ways, the better the sleep is. And then that sort of, back and forth influences our health and our wellness during the day. So there's definitely a huge component to sauna and just cleansing the body of pollution and re-optimizing it through the various aspects of sauna that help with sleep, with quality of sleep. But then on top of that, the more recent understanding that we have, for me, it's actually brand new understanding, is the role photobiomodulation, red light therapy, and near-infrared light therapy can also play in sleep. So there's this study they did on Chinese female basketball players where they gave them near-infrared light right before bed. And then they watched their quality of their sleep and their sleep patterns. And they had really amazing dramatic improvement in it. And so what's going on there? And why would shining red light and near-infrared light on the mitochondria? And I just mentioned all these benefits of photobiomodulation, that people are using it for pretty much reduction in risk of disease of so many different things. But why sleep? And so that led to my new understanding, but an understanding that's been out there for a little while about what's called mitochondrial melatonin. So I thought it'd be really cool if we talked about that. Like,
I would love that.
It's so interesting, this mitochondrial melatonin stuff. So before I actually get into that, I wanted to show you a couple magic tricks real quick with the photon, with the product.
Yes,
I think
please.
I showed you this at the Bulletproof conference that you were at.
Is it around flicker rate? Because I was going to ask you about.
Yeah, it's
fantastic.
It's absolutely, it's two things.
Great.
So it's like, well, why is our indoor environment so not optimal for our health? Of course, there's a dearth of sunshine. We're not getting any of that. But what's in the modern indoor environment that our ancestors never dealt with? And the answer is blue light. More than anything else, visible light, whether it's our screens or LED lights above or fluorescent lights. It turns out that this stuff is very stressful to us. That's why you see, blue blocker glasses to work with at the computer. Yep. And it's like, okay, you can protect yourself a little bit from the blue light, but can you correct the environment at all? Can we make that indoor environment a little bit more naturalistic, a little bit more like the outdoor environment? And so let me show you two ways in which near-infrared light from an incandescent light source, which I'm going to use the photon as an example. It features our special thermal light bulb. It's a kind of a custom-made therapeutic near-infrared light bulb. And so I have here a flicker meter. This is basically a tool that measures the pulsing rate of pulsed light, which is unnatural light. The sun doesn't pulse. It's constant direct stimulation. But all of the LEDs and the fluorescent lights have this additional aspect beyond the blue light stress that's called flicker stress or flickering light stress. You can imagine if you had a patient who is autistic, you wouldn't put a strobe light in front of them. It turns out that's a little bit exaggerated, but that applies to all humans. All this pulsing light around us is like a strobe light that is getting us all jacked up and stressed out. And so I'm just going to turn this on. I've got I got some fluorescent studio lights to brighten up my face for the talk, and I've got some other lights that are all flickering. So I got this flicker meter, and can you hear that?
Yes.
How loud it is?
Yep.
And so watch this.
And then once it's near the red light, then it's going off. Yes.
Yeah. Once it's near the near infrared light, basically it's a little bit of red. It's majority near infrared that we can't see, but essentially this high energy infrared light is what we speculate is it's filling in the gaps between the pulses. And so the perceived light that the human perceives, that I perceive here, is not flickering. So we have a reduction in the measurable flicker effect. And then the other thing we have is, the blue light stresses you out. You've probably talked a lot about that. It messes with your sleep cycle and all that. So we won't get into that too much. But also, like, how can we correct it? So my other little magic trick here is I have kind of this fancy, it's called the Hupo. It's a really fancy spectrometer.
Nice.
And I'm just going to show you real quick. I'm going to point it at the screen, my computer screen here.
Yep.
And you can see this is the spectrum. So if I hold it up, there's no infrared light. There's a lot of visible light, a lot of blue, and it's really jagged and kind of nasty looking, Yeah. So now I'm going to show you, compare that to this light source here, the photon.
Yes, I got mine over here.
So look at the difference in the spectrum.
Ooh.
Almost no blue, no ultraviolet, just a huge concentration in near infrared. And so what the photon is much more similar to than the digital screen is actually the sun. And so the sun gives you near infrared light. And so that's why the incandescent light bulbs are still the best light that we can have, because it's not just about visible light. It's about healthy light and light that actually heals us. So the sun is 54% infrared, and most of that is in the near infrared region. So when people think of the sun and they think in this winter, I'm not getting as much sun, you typically thinking of ultraviolet light and vitamin D production. And that's a more mainstream understanding of what does the sun do for us? It promotes vitamin D production through ultraviolet light. What people don't understand as much is that that's a very small component of sunlight, less than 10%. Over half of the sun's emission, half of this big apple pie we get from the sun is near infrared. And so we know that it's doing the biggest dose of the sun that we need to get every day for hours and hours of the day is activating mitochondrial healing responses and antioxidative responses and healing and anti-aging effects and inflammation reduction effects. And that has so many implications for optimal health, immune function, sleep, disease, so many other things. But it turns out too that it has an effect on what's called mitochondrial melatonin, which
Yes.
is it's so fascinating. So there it is. It's like all of this, and I'm going to talk about it now. All of this is an argument to get a lot of sunshine every day. But for those of you, that don't get it, what do? Well, this type of light, incandescent, near infrared centric light, is really the next best thing. And for those of us who are indoors all the time, it's not just about it being, in a sauna, like the Sauna Space saunas that we make, but also just having it wherever you're at indoors at all times, whether it's recreational or occupational endeavors. You want to maximize your dosage of near infrared light every day because you're necessarily living indoors and working indoors basically all day long.
So real quick too, I do have two questions for you about that. So one being, the point about flicker rate is really, really important because I think a lot of people out there might be in this conversation. They're shopping, they're looking at they're looking at different red light panels and near infrared panels, and they might have no idea about this conversation of flicker or only loosely connected to it. So one, I'm curious why more companies don't do the work or what is the work that you've been able to do to ensure that that's not in your product. And the second one is why that's more of a missing, that more companies haven't stacked these two together in the same way that you have. How have you been able to do that?
Yeah, so flickering light is associated with migraines and depression and insomnia and other things. It sucks to work at the computer all day. Everybody feels tired and worn out when you work at the computer. So we have red light filters you can put on the screens. We wear blue blockers, but it still is quite obvious this is not a healthy, optimal human activity, but we do it to survive, right? The modern world, we have to do this to survive. Everything is through, and certainly since the public health crisis of COVID, we're more and more working at home, more and more in front of the computer. So you can look into research onto that, but you really want to minimize the flickering light exposure you get as much as possible,
Yeah.
So where does flickering light come from? It comes from LEDs, light emitting diodes, and fluorescent light. LEDs pulse at 2 times the supply frequency in the US, which is 60 hertz, so they pulse 120 hertz. That means they turn on and off 120 times a second. So zzz, 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 zzz. And fluorescent bulbs at a little bit different frequencies kind of do the same thing.
Sure.
We don't want that. And if you talk about red light therapy or near infrared light therapy from the great incandescent in the sky, the sun, that's created all life on Earth, that nourishes all life on Earth, it doesn't flicker. It's a constant stimulus. It's not flickering. So ideally, we don't have that. But why have other companies not done that? Why have we in particular focused so much on it? It really comes down to the nature of the technology itself, Molly.
Okay.
It's not easy to design fluorescent and LED light emitting technology to prevent it from flickering. It's a nature of how it actually works. You basically run electricity through a computer chip and it begins to fluoresce these compounds. And so the alternating current source of it causes the flicker. It's not just the flicker though, and fluorescent lights are even worse because they're also mercury vapor containing. So don't break it if you have it at home. That's a whole nother conversation. The other thing is not just that that the Sauna Space product doesn't flicker. Oh yeah, and by the way, why does it not flicker? It's like, you're like, Brian, you're powering it with you're plugging it in the wall. It's the same alternating current. Why doesn't the incandescent bulb not flicker? Particularly this one. Low wattage incandescent bulbs do actually flicker because they're still getting, this alternating current that we get from electricity from the walls. The difference here is we have a huge filament that's really hot. And so when there's this this pulsing of the electrical signal, instead of it shutting off and on 120 times a second, it's so hot and it's so big that it just glows like this. So if you measure with a flicker meter, you can't even measure anything. And if you have a really expensive, like many, many thousands of dollars more expensive flicker meter, you still will almost measure nothing. These things I didn't know in the beginning, but they reinforced the design and they led to further understanding. Yeah, you ideally don't do near infrared light therapy, for example, with a bunch of 25 or 50 watt bulbs. Better to have these big, large 250 watt bulbs to do this, to completely avoid the flicker issue. But the other thing is, and it goes to the nature of incandescent technology, is the broadband nature of the spectrum. And you can see this on my website, Sauna Space. Just go to the Learn tab. You can see what does the sunlight look like on a graph. It's all these different wavelengths, all at the same time. That's what broad spectrum light is. And most of it is in near infrared. And that's, kind of what I mentioned before.
Yeah.
And so we're trying to mimic that. And the reason this can mimic it so well is because it's incandescent light. It's incandescent. Incandescence is a physics concept that's inherent to the universe. Essentially, you heat a material up hot enough and it begins to emit light. So when you have an iron rod and you heat it up and it glows red, that's incandescence. And so is the candle. And the sun is 6,000 degrees. And certainly the tungsten filament, it's about 2,400 degrees in the bulb itself, not the outside of the bulb, but the filament itself. And so that produces the light in a way that we would call it the light of nature. Natural light is analog and broadband. And only incandescent technology, in terms of current human technology, is able to reproduce that, because it's reproducing the light via the same physics principle that the sun produces light. And so the quality of light is quite different. If you look at a red light therapy panel, which there's a lot of those out there, and some of them are great products, all of them deliver light in a very narrow band, a big spiky band. What they're saying is it's kind of like what we do here with incandescent light is more like the orange.
Yeah.
And what the LED light therapy is synthetic vitamin C. And what we're saying is, synthetic vitamin C. I mean, you can take vitamin C when you're sick, and it's very effective for some targeted uses, but it doesn't have the synergy and the full spectrum nature, the holistic nature of the natural form. And what is that? Well, humans in nature never got red light without the heating wavelengths that are not mitochondrial activating, but they're heating the mid-infrareds, the lower energy infrareds. You always got the two of these together. So it's kind of this weird modern thing that we said, no, we're going to divorce the two. We know better than nature, and we're just going to give you this one thing. But it turns out your body and your mitochondria, everything is designed to get things in that natural form, which in terms of light is broadband, non-flickering, non-pulsing light. And also the distribution of the wavelengths. Like I said, near-infrared light is almost half of the sun's emission. Why don't we try to mimic that? And so that's what we try to do here. And we've developed a customized light bulb to further kind of tune that in, the thermal light bulb that we have. But we started out with what I feel like is the right technology. And then we sort of remove the toxic sidecar issues with the flickering light. And of course, through EMF shielding principles, we have also removed that toxic sidecar, because anything that's electrically powered can produce electromagnetic stress, which also is bad for sleep.
Yes.
Among many other things.
Yep.
And so we have just various technological solutions to make sure the user is not influenced at all by any of the electromagnetism in the product, other than literally the light itself that's produced.
Absolutely. Well, one, I think I really appreciate that you've been mindful and often share about this flicker conversation and educate people on that topic, along with the EMF conversation, because a lot of people then might be making these big investments in, say, getting a sauna, and unbeknownst to them, now they're sitting in a space that could very well be giving them high doses of EMFs. And it can be really upsetting insight for people to realize after having made that commitment. So the fact that you are quite open about all the work that you do to ensure that you're cutting those EMFs, and even to the point of the Faraday infrared sauna that you have as well, fully really pointing to the EMF blocking technology, which is really exciting.
Yeah, it's back to what is the perfect ancestral environment.
Yes.
And 100 years ago, there was no man-made, what's called non-native EMF. And now we have it's like 10 to the 18. It's like a billion times more man-made EMF, particularly microwave signals and radio waves and stuff than we had 100 years ago. And we're not programmed to deal with it. Our bodies basically trip out, and they just like the blue light stress, they interpret it as a sympathetic stress. So it's like a tiger in the room. In your body's programmed. When you see that tiger, it's like, oh my God, run. And so you get jacked up, cortisol, adrenaline, everything, and you run. But there's a cognitive dissonance because there's no tiger. There's just blue light and this non-native EMF that it does have a biological impact that is adverse, and it's all day long. It's also ubiquitous. That's another thing our ancestors never had that we have nowadays. We have stress that we get, EMF, blue light, and otherwise, that's constant 24 hours.
Yeah.
Our ancestors never had that. Even the sun, they didn't have after dark. And so anything that you have in your life that is unending, not temporary stress, is bad stress. Good stress, hormetic stress, is like sauna and sunlight and near-infrared light therapy and so many other things where you give a stimulus to the body, and then it can sort of intelligently utilize that for its various biological processes.
Wow. Okay. So touching on all of these topics, you clearly have so much information and knowledge on this area. Share with me about, because I know even before we started recording, something that you've been really excited about and kind of alluded to is these discoveries for even yourself of experimenting around melatonin. So I wanted to give you an opportunity to share what you're coming upon.
Yeah. So, and this for me is just so first full circle, Molly, because my original reason I got into it, so the biggest complaint I had was the insomnia and the mind racing. I'd just lay there in bed and be like, come on, fall
we're
asleep.
Cut from the same cloth. That's the whole reason for Sleep as a Skill. The creation there was my own issues with sleep. So I completely hear you.
Yeah. And so you just have a deep curiosity for this subject in general. And my new understanding about what's called mitochondrial melatonin is just mind blowing. And this is not research that I did. This is really way smarter people than me have examined this and figured it out. But we see a growing body of research supporting this concept. So let's just break it down real quick. Melatonin, I'm sure you talk about that a lot too. Most people think it's in here in the pineal gland. You get blue light stimulus in the day, like sunshine. You build up melatonin and then the sun sets and hopefully you don't have computer screens around you and you get a release of melatonin into your brain clock and you kind of go to sleep. And that promotes the circadian rhythm, our sleep clock, our biological clock. And that leads to good sleep. And that's what is really ideal. So what's mind blowing about this new understanding of melatonin is that the melatonin in the pineal gland is only 5% of the body's melatonin. 95% of the body's melatonin response systems are in the mitochondria and are not affected, by the way, by dietary supplementation of melatonin. It doesn't get into there. And they're really two different melatonin. It's the same melatonin, but they're two very different systems and they do interact with each other, but they're also kind of separate. But basically, here's the fascinating thing. So 95% of the body's melatonin is in the mitochondria. It's like, okay, well, what is that doing? So we know that melatonin is like one of the most powerful antioxidant actors you have. It heals, it helps clean up things, it fixes oxidative stress. So oxidative stress causes aging and disease. Like EMFs, for example, cause too much reactive oxygen species production, leading to peroxynitrite, which penetrates the nucleic water, breaks down, and actually denatures our DNA, just like ultraviolet light, just like an X-ray. So EMFs are doing that. This is another problem, like too much oxidative stress in our bodies. That's what leads to disease and death and dying and just all that. And so a healthy human and a healthy cell is rich in antioxidants. We've got lots of them. We got an excess of them. And so when we get a free radical and we get some stress going on, that's smothered basically by the antioxidants. So melatonin is like number one in terms of doing that. It also supports mitochondrial function. It helps support all these near-infrared light therapy, direct mitochondrial responses. It's like too much to get into right now, all these nuances of what it does in this stuff. But clearly, it has a central, fundamental role in the mitochondria and in keeping our cells healthy. And so here's what's really interesting. What stimulates the production of 95% of the mitochondrial melatonin, or 95% of the melatonin, which is in fact in the mitochondria? Well, it turns out it's near-infrared light, the majority component of the sun. The same thing that's going in and doing all this other awesome healing stuff and anti-aging stuff, inflammation reduction and collagen promotion and all this. It also is like the primary stimulant to get melatonin things going in the mitochondria. So with this understanding, this is basically a really strong argument to get like 6, 7, 8 hours of sunlight a day, preferably in the morning and the evening when there's the most near infrared and the least amount of ultraviolet and blue. So what this means is you shouldn't be sunbathing at the beach at 1 p.m.
Right.
You should be up at sunrise and you should be watching the sunset. You know how our ancestors watched the sunset? That's a real thing. And not just that. After dark, what do? Well, back in the day, we sat next to the campfire and the fireplace and we continued to dose ourselves with near-infrared light. It's not just heating you, the fireplace and the campfire. It's actually stimulating cellular repair and antioxidative systems. And the primary vehicle again of it appears to be in many ways melatonin. And so it's really trippy that your sleep is both related heavily to how much blue light exposure you're getting after dark with all these digital screens, visible light sources, but also how your sleep is, adversely affected by those things, but how it's improved and corrected and fixed and made perfect again by near infrared light.
Wow. Such a great thesis for the whys. Certainly when we speak to kind of biohacking and what have you, it's been sort of this trendy thing for the last few years, red light and saunas and what have you. But to really get into the nuts and bolts of it, so much of it is less about the gadgetry and more about mimicking of how things really were, kind of a blueprint for getting back to this ancestral health. So really fantastic. Thank you so much for taking us through all of that. It was very educational. And I'm clear that we only touched on like a fraction of what's there in this conversation. So for someone that's been so thoughtful about health and well-being, has made it their entire focus, people often want to know, what are you doing for your sleep? So I want to ask you a couple of quick questions around your sleep in particular, how you're kind of managing that. I'm clear that you're testing lots of things, doing lots of things in the conversation, so it's probably evolves. But right now, the first question would be, what does your nightly sleep routine look like? I'm imagining some sunset in there, but anything else that you'd like to share?
Yeah, well, this whole concept that we just went through about how melatonin is not just the hormone of sleep, it's maybe actually the hormone of daylight, and the hormone of healthy daytime stuff. It kind of reinforces what I've been doing for 8 years. And one is to use my sauna every day. And originally when I had really big sleep problems, Molly, I used it right before bed, as I described. But now for time, schedule reasons, I only use it in the morning because at home I'm with my kids and my family after dark, after work. So I just don't have as much time for that. But what it's really reinforced in terms of my nightly routine is to get this near infrared light into every aspect of wherever I am indoors, if I'm indoors after dark. So of course, for me, since I make this stuff, I've got lots of these photons all around, but I also only have incandescent light bulbs at home, even in the ambient, regular lighting that I use, try to avoid LEDs and fluorescent light. I also like in my home and in my bedrooms, I try to incorporate electromagnetic shielding into the bedroom to kind of, again, the 24-hour stress, right? We wouldn't leave the light on all night long when you're sleeping. And so the same principle, you want to kind of block out all that EMF stuff as much as you can. But a thing I recently started doing based on kind of this understanding and also some other effects of near infrared light on the lymphatic system for lymphatic drainage is I put the photon light behind my head for about 5 or 10 minutes before bed.
Lymphatic drainage. Yeah.
Lymphatic drainage is kind of a quick cleanse. And it's just a big, it's back to the melatonin, the mitochondrial melatonin stuff, and doing as much as you can to prepare the body for sleep. Because I'll be honest, I do look at screens and sometimes TV after dark. How could I not? And especially with the kids and the family. And so it's a way to correct things, even at the last minute. Even if you didn't do a sauna and you had a blue light bonanza during the day, you can still correct that a little before bed. The other thing I try to do is really to avoid as much as possible screen watching, kind of after dark. It's kind of a weird shift to do, but you can if you want to watch a movie, watch it during the day instead of after dark, for example. And when you're watching the movie, what can you do for the blue light? So you can take near infrared light and put it like, if you're my TV, I'll do this so that I'm getting near infrared light in
counteract.
To counteract in the photonic sphere in front of me. So the TV watching, it's a little weird the first time you do it. Like if you have a friend over, and then it's really, you like it. You don't get out of, it's just like working at the computer with the near infrared light and the red light. It's just not so draining. You get out of it. You ever go to a movie theater and you watch like a 3-hour movie and you get out and you're like, oh.
Yes, exactly.
Those are, I do some other hacks, and I'll mention some of those, but what you said and what I'm trying to get at is I feel like is the key. How do you mimic the habits of our ancestors in the modern world? So how can we make things more naturalistic in this super synthetic world we have? And we're beings of light. We eat light. We're quantum mechanical, much more than biochemical or something. We're photoelectric. And we eat light and we heal with light and we need light, but we need the right type of light. And so it's both a really simple understanding. Let's just do what our ancestors did. But that's also what I love about biohacking is we're trying to trick our bodies into thinking they're back in nature, basically. That's what biohacking is. It's not cheating. It's tricking the body into thinking it's where it wants to be. And so what gadgetry, can we use to do that? And so that's kind of what I've been obsessing here for over 8 years. But the other things I do are diet related, first and foremost, and that is more ketogenic diet. So, and that, like, I eat animal meat that's grass fed with lots of fat. But in the morning, I actually don't even do that. I start out with a fat coffee, and I'm doing that because there's a certain nirvana between intermittent fasting, which is not the same thing, tightening that window in which you're eating, and then what you're eating is more fat based.
Yeah.
As opposed to carby, cereal based, and then sauna. And so it's like, those are like nirvana together. The more protein and fat based diet and a natural food, animal diet, although some people actually do really well with vegetarian diet or vegan diet. I totally don't knock that. That's all about like what your body needs. And there's actually some genetic predispositions to certain diets. But for me, this is what works. And what I love most about all of it, and this is way beyond sleep now, is that I feel better and my mood's better and my brain works better.
Yeah.
When I do these 3 things. And I know the improved sleep quality is a huge part of that, but that's what our ancestors did. They, more or less, with some variances, ate more of a whole animal, nose to tail kind of diet, nose to tail animal diet. And they didn't have any blue light after dark. And they had intermittent periods of starvation, which we can mimic, we could trick by doing intermittent fasting. And then they knew that they could sweat things out. They could sweat out the pollution and junk and correct their bodies with sauna. And then, of course, on top of that, light, lots of near-infrared light every day. So I do that. In my fat coffee in the morning, I put in mushrooms. Big fan of mushrooms. It's a great way to get so much out of so little. So there you go.
Yeah, exactly.
And then so I put collagen in it and turmeric in it, which is awesome. And then just kind of try to supplement other cool biohacking, understood sort of dietary hacks like ashwagandha and things like that. But yeah, just kind of live as much like our ancestors are, instead of being a hermit or a Luddite or something. And like, no, we're going to run away from all this. Like, I want to be here. If we're going to help people and we're going to heal the world one person at a time, it's here in the toxic environment we're in. This is where we're needed. We can't run away from this. So here we have all these things make it possible for us to thrive in what is an increasingly non-optimal human environment. We can still thrive. We can still live well and feel good and have purpose and satisfaction and not be just like the typical American health experience, which is a lot of prescription drugs, a lot of toxicity, a lot of frustration, and a lot of disease. Number 1 and number 2 killer or causes of death in America are heart disease and cancer, which I'm not a healthcare provider, but in my humble opinion, those are lifestyle diseases.
Absolutely. Yes. Well, wow. I mean, certainly, not only is this an area of your business, but it's completely throughout the course of your life. Like it is something that you're involved in and practicing and looking to continually see how you can improve upon. So really inspiring stuff. And did we miss anything that would relate to the second question, which is what might we see on your nightstand or even your proverbial nightstand if you're traveling, or so it could even relate to gadgets or apps or ambiance or anything?
Yeah, so it's definitely this. It's the Photon. It's on my nightstand as I keep referring to it. But also,
I love this thing. It's so portable.
It just goes. Yeah, and you have one, right? And so we do make a Photon soft case. We make a travel bag. And so when I go, I can't take my sauna with me. It's a little bit too big. But I always take the Photon in the soft case, and I always put it in my rolly, my little carry-on luggage. And I take that everywhere with me because hotel environments are terrible.
Oh, the worst.
For sleep, they're just awful. And so you can take that naturalism with you when the go. So that's basically I'm wedded to that thing, and I love that thing. It's my baby. It's my happy light. It goes everywhere. But also, if I don't have that on after dark, there's reading lights that are LED based, but they're battery powered, and they focus on more of a red orange spectrum. Yeah. So I think I don't want to mess it up, but I think there's a Huga brand. They have, you can get those online. Really cool way to read after dark and minimize your exposure to blue light. So I'm always using that. I'm avoiding blue light back things. So I have a Kindle that I read, I read a lot. And so I always read with my Kindle, but I never use the blue backlight. I use the little orange red Huga light to read with, to just be really careful and conscious of minimizing the exposure to the visible light, after dark. And that it really does have, a cumulative effect, has an immediate effect on the sleep in that day. But if you get into watching, doing night work at the computer or watching TV every night for many, many days, you just are whacked out.
Oh, absolutely.
All next day.
And if you haven't tried it on the, if it's an iPad or you said it's the Kindle itself, is that right? Or the Kindle app?
If I don't have a paper book, I have a Kindle that I read from, but I avoid the use of the blue light. It has a built-in blue light, to read after dark, but that's terrible.
Totally.
As for what we're saying. So instead I use the little battery powered Huga light.
Totally. I wanted to check just because one kind of workaround we've seen for some people is if you have, say, like an iPad or what have you, you can do that triple click sort of trick that you can do on your iPhone to get total red. And you can use that on an iPad as a Kindle with the Kindle app. So if anyone listening wants to kind of be on the go and have that red light, but still you want to be mindful to have as much of that kind of counteracting as you're speaking to with that red light, which is huge. And for the physical book for sure as well, that red light, all of that, those are fantastic suggestions. So I love that you're thought these all through.
I'm glad you brought that up because that's a huge thing too. We don't have time to show you that, but with the spectrometer that I have, you can see a screen that has night shift on.
Yes.
And using flux versus full display brightness and blue. It's like 100 times the amount of blue light coming out of the screen.
Totally.
That's such an easy fix. That color filter on the phone and the color filters on the screens. And in fact, there's such a mainstream recognition of that manufacturers like Apple have introduced that as a native feature on their products.
Yes,
so
absolutely.
That's a key thing too. That does matter. All these things matter. But for me, the most important thing is to correct things.
Yes.
Limit your exposure to the bad stuff, but how can you maximize your exposure to the things that are corrective and healing?
Great. Amazing. Well, we might have touched on some of them, but the last question would be, what has been your biggest kind of sleep aha moment or what's made the biggest change to your sleep game?
Yeah, we touched on it. It's really understanding that we're beings of light and we need to not have man-made visible light and blue light after dark. And instead, we need a lot of this infrared light. I mean, Molly, it was something that was just nagging me for so long. And one sauna session using these lights, these big, huge near-infrared light bulbs changed everything in one session. And so that's something that is not unique to me. That's our human nature, and everybody benefits from that. And certainly with the wide sort of innumerable almost array of beneficial things that happen with sauna and with near-infrared light, it's kind of a no-brainer because, for me, the biggest aha moment, if I want to call it that, is that this is a 20-minute investment, 2 or 3 times a week.
Yes.
It's not an hour at the gym. And after this, you feel good. You don't feel worn out and the treadmill or whatever you do for your workouts and stuff. This is something that you get done with this experience and you feel boosted. You feel good. You feel zen and centered. And certainly as you do over time, you will see changes in your health. Good changes.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for sharing all of your amazing knowledge. And I'm sure people listening will want to know more about you and your products and what, how they can follow. So let them know the best ways to stay connected.
Yeah, our website is sauna.space. So you can just search online for Sauna Space or sauna.space. And, you find on there our products on there, but also we have a really awesome Learn Center now that we've worked really hard to explain, what's the difference between these different types of light and natural light and synthetic light and EMFs and sauna. And there's so much information, overload of information out there, and everybody's a health expert. And so it's how do you sift through that and distill that? So we tried really hard to do that. So that's really cool on the website. Plus, for those of you who are left brain, go to the bottom in the footer, and I have this research archive that I've personally curated and organized by topic, all the PubMed research that is relevant. And there's a sleep.
Really?
You click on sleep in there and you can see boom, boom, boom. So people who like to read the white papers and the science stuff. I love
that.
It's all there. We're just, I want to do my best to ensure people understand how relevant this is, how important this is, how easy it is to understand and get it, and to be empowered to, take your health into your own hands and and such a ridiculously simple thing, to just kind of sit there and be still in front of light and heat and have so many awesome things happening. It's almost unbelievable, but it's not. It's well supported, again, by the research and the ancestral wisdom. I mean, what more could you ask for?
Ah, wow. Well, beautifully said, beautifully executed. I know we didn't even mention the look of your product, but it really just is even aesthetically pleasing. So there's just so many things that you really bring to the table in this company that you've created. So I really thank you for doing the work you do and for taking the time to share clearly your immense passion on this topic. So thank you.
Thank you, Molly, for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Awesome. Thanks. You've been listening to the Sleep is a Skill podcast, the #1 podcast for people who want to take their sleep skills to the next level. Every Monday, I send out something that I call Molly's Monday Obsessions, containing everything that I'm obsessing over in the world of sleep. Head on over to sleepisaskill.com to sign up.